Hi everyone, welcome to week 27 of Matthew's Movie Mentions. So this is everything up to the 9th of July. This week has been a really good mix of basically every type of film. So there's a couple of classics in there, there's a couple of films I wanted to watch, a couple of recommendations, some coming up for upcoming podcast viewings. And it's been pretty easy to get through films lately. I'm really enjoying the sort of spread of pictures and the different things that I'm watching. So yeah, it's a nice period in the project. So this week I am discussing Star Trek: The Motion Picture, West Side Story, Mad Max 2, Nashville, True Grit, Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, Addams Family Values, Professor Marston and the Wonder Women, and Top Gun. Star Trek: The Motion Picture is another upcoming episode of Pop Culturally Deprived. The episode ended up a much more enjoyable conversation than I expected. It gave me a new way of viewing it that I hadn't really done before. I'd always come to this as part or the first of 6 films, rather than a film on its own. So watching it and discussing it with people in that way made it much more interesting and a good insight. So that'll be an interesting episode to hear back. West Side Story is one of those classics that I'd never seen, because musicals from this era aren't really my thing. I've never really enjoyed them when I've seen them on TV. I can see why this film represents the movement away from a traditional musical towards something a bit like we saw with Sound of Music that has more of a plot, a bit more social commentary, a bit more high concept to it. But in general, this didn't work for me. I wasn't convinced by any of the characters. And Romeo and Juliet itself suffers from having some pretty poor plotting at points. There's bits of it that don't work at all, and they left those plot points as is for this film. They didn't try to fix them or improve them, so not a good adaptation on those grounds. I was recommended to watch Mad Max 2 by @ThisAEShaw on Twitter. She'd watched them with her wife, and although I hadn't watched the original, I do love Fury Road. I think it's one of the greatest action films, if not one of the greatest films ever made. So I asked if I should, and she said yes. I was surprised that this second one showed as much progression from the first as it had. I thought it was only going to be incremental steps. The story itself had more twists, more actual plot than I expected it to give me. Still just an action film. It wasn't as gripping, and I think the problem is knowing we're going to get somewhere so good, these don't stand up as well anymore. For Nashville, Bright Wall Dark Room it's an online movie magazine. They did a poll of films that people thought most represented America recently for Independence Day. This was the film that came top, and it was already on my list, so I thought it was one I should definitely watch on the 5th of July, which seemed like the best time to do so. I enjoyed it. I'm not sure I can recommend it, because there wasn't a huge amount of plot, and it's got such a large ensemble, it's kind of hard to engage with any character. The film that I was put in mind of was Love Actually, that same sort of very large ensemble, not too much tie between them, but seeing different aspects of the same thing. But this is actually showing the aspects of success and power in America rather than Love Actually's display of romance and relationships. I'm pleased I've seen it. I think it's one that I will probably put on my list of films to watch again next year, to revisit and watch with more knowledge of the film. True Grit, so this is the recent Coen Brothers version of the film, and continuing my Coen Brothers watching. It was a really strange experience, because as I was watching, I realised I'd seen large swathes of this film, especially including the ending, but I cannot remember watching it. So, I don't know. By and large, it was an enjoyable film. Jeff Bridges does the thing that Jeff Bridges does. Yeah, it was okay. Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome was less good, certainly in terms of the plot and action. You can see that progression again getting towards Fury Road, so I can understand that how we get to the world that they build for that 4th film. But this film was really strange. That second half was particularly quite odd. It felt like a different film almost, and I am baffled by the fact this had a $10 million budget, and then Fury Road has $150 million. That is quite a jump. I'd love to be in the conversations to find out what they said to get that much money. Addams Family Values was just starting on TV after the football on Saturday evening, so we left it on, and it still holds up for me as one of the great sequels. Joan Cusack is superb in this, and it does what I like from zany comedies. There are jokes every 30 seconds. So, they are all very, very good jokes. But if one doesn't land, there'll be another one along in a short while. Professor Marston and the Wonder Women was one I've been looking forward to watching since its release, but I missed it when it was at the cinema. The film was more nuanced than I expected it to be. It was particularly exploring the elements of polyamory and love in that situation, and what it is being in a society that does not respect your life choices. I think the women in this were particularly well done. Both the portrayals, the performances, and the writing for them, they were with the draw to this. I think the more interesting aspects. And finally, Top Gun is another upcoming podcast, which will be an interesting one. The film, it does action very well, it does tension quite well, but the characters have absolutely no nuance. The dialogue is very hammy. By and large, this film does not surprise as it goes through, and there's aspects of this film I don't understand why they're there. The whole thing with his dad does not add anything to the film. It just gives him a reason to brood rather than giving him characterization. So it's not my recommendation for the week, as you can probably guess. My recommendation is Professor Marston and the Wonder Woman. It's much less about the creation of Wonder Woman than I expected, and it was more about accepting and accepting yourself and being true to yourself. I'd love to see this film, the same story delivered, but the focus being on the women, the being the focus of the plot rather than the man, especially the wife Elizabeth, and the fact that she's the one who almost has prejudices against herself, and it causes her a sort of anguish. Yeah, I'm finding it hard to even put the words together about it, but I feel like you wouldn't even need to refilm necessarily. It just needs an edit to reframe this about Professor Marston and his wife, and make it about her rather than about him. But no, excellent film, really well done. I recommend everyone to go and seek that out. So next week, I've got a few journeys on trains, so I've definitely got time to put a few in there. There's a number of films available at the moment that I've wanted to watch for a while, so I'm looking forward to catching a couple of them. And we've got some good podcast recordings coming up soon, some of which I've already done the watching for, so I will find time to watch some other stuff. So I will see you all in week 28.